Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Good morning to all our listeners. Welcome to Breaking the Chains Recovery Radio. And I've really missed you guys the last 2 weeks. We've had some rebroadcasts running. We're live this week at 27 Boxes in Melville. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Warren, and I'm here in studio this morning with a good friend of mine, someone who's played an important role in my life, and a man with a truly inspirational story. Justin, welcome to BTC Radio, boss.
Oh, thanks for having me. How's it to all the listeners out there? Really good to be here and to speak about the subject and the topic that we have for today.
So what we're going to be speaking about this morning is a topic which over the years, I think a lot of stigma has been removed, but there's still some stigma out there, and being a show on addiction and recovery, there's a relation to that very topic. What we're speaking about this morning is HIV and addiction. And Justin is in the industry of addiction treatment. Justin, you work a lot with people who are also HIV positive. Tell us a bit about your story and how you got involved and where your passion developed for this industry and this specific field within the industry.
Well, I think being someone who's HIV positive myself and thinking that I was going to die and being ignorant to what HIV actually is made me realize that there's a lot of ignorance around a subject that goes hand in hand with drugs, you know. As we're seeing the years now that people sharing needles, that HIV is just a symptom of a bigger problem, that being addiction, that being unsafe sex, and not being educated. I went through a battle and found out that I was HIV positive in prison, and I thought I was going to die, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I used it as an excuse to use more drugs, you know, because I thought if I'm going to die anyway, I might as well go out kicking.
Drug yourself to death.
Drug myself to
And
death.
how long ago did you find out? You said you were in prison at the time.
Yeah, what I know is that I was probably HIV positive in 2004. I got sentenced in 2005, and I found out when I started getting sick in prison in late 2005. And it was the most alone I'd felt in my life. There was no one really to talk to. There wasn't much counseling. There actually wasn't any counseling. ARV treatment wasn't being given like it's given today, that the moment you positive, you get treatment. Then you had to have a CD4 count of 250, and you're in a cell with 30 guys, and you can't be vulnerable. You can't tell anyone. You're too scared to tell anyone. And I felt so alone that I thought, let me just drug the rest of this prison. There's no chance in coming right. And I used drugs to cover it up, to not deal with it.
So you found out in 2005 that you were positive, and you spoke about in addiction people contracting HIV through unsafe sex and sharing needles amongst intravenous drug users. Do you have any idea how you contracted the virus and where, when, about, what happened for you?
Well, the thing with my drug of choice or no choice, heroin, is it's not such a sexual drug.
Okay.
Heroin is your everything, and you're not really that into women. You're just into the next needle in your arm. So,
and being a depressant, one struggles to to get it up.
Yes, as we say, impotency is a thing.
It is indeed.
I know you can attest to that.
Not anymore.
But as it was before. So it was definitely through sharing needles. As a heroin addict, you'll do anything to get that drug in your system and take that sickness away. Whether that means sharing with someone. I did some really stupid things like go into hospitals late at night and take needles out the shop. And so do I know exactly where? I don't know like which person, which date, but I know the lifestyle that I was living was a great contributor, and that's an addiction lifestyle and a culture of addiction, you know. And with that drug, I don't care what I do. I just need to feel better. I don't want to feel sick.
You're physically sick and you're desperate.
And you're desperate, yeah.
Now, in the media, I think over the last year or two, there's been this sensational story, which I think you and me spoke about before on a one-on-one basis, and it's this Bluetoothing. And it was sensationalized. I think Carte Blanche did a piece on Bluetoothing, and obviously that's one way, because you're injecting someone else's blood. For those who don't know what Bluetoothing is, what is the true story behind this Bluetoothing story, and if it's a real thing, what are the consequences coming from such behavior?
You know, Bluetoothing doesn't really make sense in my head, because if you take the bag and you shoot it up, and then you draw back the blood and you give someone else a needle full of blood, firstly, you're going to block my needle, and as a heroin addict, I'm not willing to take that chance because blood congels. Secondly, I know that I'm not going to get a hit. It makes more sense to me that we half a bag, or you leave me a little bit on the bag and I clean it and then put it in a needle. And as a heroin addict, we're very precious about our needles. And for me to take that chance and give you a needle that's going to congeal and you're going to ruin my needle, it's not like there's needle dispensaries out there and I'm just going to get free needles. It's a precious commodity to a heroin addict. I think the media likes to sensationalize things. We know there's never been a reported case of flakka in South Africa, a reported case, but there was a whole media sensationalism thing of guys are walking around like zombies and Durban's a mess and flakka, and yet you can't get flakka in South Africa, you know. So I'm not a true believer of the Bluetooth story. I do know that people share needles. I do think that South Africa could go a lot better by offering clean needles to stop the prevention of HIV/AIDS, and look a lot at harm reduction, not as an end product, but as a safety net. Because people are uneducated around HIV/AIDS. People don't understand what it is, and I think to make a safer society would be a good step by our governments. I know people out there, but then we're promoting drug use. No, we're promoting safety. People are going to use drugs regardless.
Now, I know you were just in Europe, Justin, and on your trip, we were speaking before the show outside the studio, you went and visited a few programs that are being run, a few initiatives that are taking place on that side of the world that are all about harm reduction, needle exchange, even safe shooting galleries where people can go take their drugs and there's people on standby who can assist them, medical professionals, should they overdose. I want to talk a bit about that after the break. What I want to ask you, and we've got about 3 minutes left till we have to go to ad break. Your last 5 years of active addiction, you knew you were HIV positive and you continued using. What were some of the health effects? What were some of the psychological consequences? And how did the lifestyle of living with two diseases that are ultimately chronic and fatal, what were those 5 years of your addiction like once you found out you were HIV positive?
They were dark. I think addiction and HIV do not mix at all, because I need to go sit in a hospital to get my ARV treatment, but I also need to go and score and make money to score to not feel sick. So I stopped taking my ARV treatment. My disease mutated, and the first baseline of ARV medication didn't work for me. Stopped working, so I nearly died.
Sure. And in combination with that lifestyle of being a heroin addict, malnutrition,
I was getting open sores. As you can see, we're in studio, but the scars, that it was open sores. My body wasn't healing. I got to a place where I tried to commit suicide a few times.
From the hopelessness of,
I've
got a death sentence.
Yeah, I'm as good as dead. The ARV medication, the regimen 2, wasn't freely available those years, so then it made it extra hard for me to recover when I did get clean in 2010, where I had to go to specialists, guys at Helen Joseph and
Because of the mutation.
Because of the mutation, taking stronger medication, I got sick. I think you just feel dead. You feel dead on drugs anyway, especially a drug like heroin. And then when there's something else, you lose that hope in society, or any willingness to be alive, or also any boundary line on what is right and wrong morally. It goes even deeper. And finding myself standing at a robot with empty ARV bottles in my hands, with a signboard saying, please help me, I'm HIV positive and I need money for food, and then getting money for food because people feel sorry for you, and going and not
Using
getting
drugs.
food and buying drugs,
Sure.
And to go sit in a hospital the whole day from 8 till 4 till you get your medication was inaccessible for me because I'm an addict, So socially you become a complete outcast from society, and you already feel like an outcast from society.
Being an addict. Now, the hopelessness, I can relate to that hopelessness on my own level, having been in addiction, and I'm sure, as you just said, compounding it, being HIV positive, there was a lot of darkness, as you mentioned, and darkness is the right word, that darkness, that fear. When we get back from the ad break, along with your recent trip to Europe, I really want to cover that stuff. And I also want you to give a bit of a message of hope, because I know Justin's sitting here in studio today. I know him, and he's 8 years clean. I don't think we've mentioned that yet. And you've got one hell of a story of hope. So let's get a bit onto that after the break. You're listening to Breaking the Chains Recovery Radio. We're going to a break, and we're broadcasting from 27 Boxes in Melville. We'll be right back.
Hi, Tuli. Look so beautiful. Hey, long time no see. What happened to your skin, by the way? The last time I saw you, you had a lot of blemishes and breakouts. It was so terrible, man.
Wow, thanks for that, Bruno. Luckily, I discovered DMK. Have you heard of DMK?
DMK? Who are they?
DMK is a paramedical skincare brand that specializes in all skin conditions. Would you like their number?
Yes, please.
I know you're not good at numbers, so let me give you their website address because your skin looks terrible. It's www.dmkskincare.co.za.
It's the official Major World Online Stew Invasion.
Bars on bars.
What about me right now? It's about our guest. Bafethi skip on. I'm out ngasalele bafethi. Yo, I'm afraid nyana studio bafethi skip on. Oh, freestyle nyana. Shenge freestyle. Fana kuma no baba Andy.
Hey yo Andy. Hashtag.
Ahlanganisela mawuthi beat dog. Nokucela.
Young niggas' ambition, waking up is working for money. Changing their past, feeding their fams, balang lali. We keep it running like SPV, exchanging money.
Man, nice. Hey. Call them unexpected experts. White sweatshirt.
Hey.
Looking down on these niggas, my damn neck hurts.
Woo.
You can go ahead, homie, give me your best work. I bet you take your phone out and mumble up your first words.
Live from 27 Boxes in the heart of Melville. This is brandlive.co.za.
Mondays definitely aren't blue when you're tuned in to Breaking the Chains Recovery Radio. Welcome back from the ad break if you've just tuned in. My name's Warren, your host, and I'm here in studio with our guest today, Justin. Before the break, we were speaking a bit about Justin's story and how he contracted HIV through intravenous drug use, him finding out in prison, and now I really want to move on to a message of hope because Justin's got a beautiful story, 8 years clean. Before we get to that, Justin, you just came back from Europe, and however much you went on a holiday, being your passion in the industry of addiction and being passionate about HIV and people living with HIV, you went on a bit of a, what would I call it, working tour while on holiday and experienced some cool things that you've told me about on a one-on-one level. What's happening that side?
I think the most amazing thing that I saw with Europe, and particularly Amsterdam and Holland, which is where I looked at the treatment centers and what is going on there. The first interesting fact that I found was that there's only one private treatment center in the whole of Holland. 122 government facilities and one
Population
private.
of?
If you look at Amsterdam, if you look at Holland, you're looking at about 25 million people.
And we've got how many in South Africa to 60
South
million
Africa,
people?
If we talk about, we've got maybe 7 to 9
To 60 million
in the whole
people.
country, 7 to 9 government treatment centers and hundreds of private treatment centers. And I think what that immediately shows is the difference in social dynamic about how they care for their people. You know, I didn't see one addict living on the street. They have these transition houses.
No
where you-
Nyalpe addicts at the robots.
Nyalpe living on the street, standing at the robots. They have these transition houses. You can go in for a night. They give you a shower, hot meal, nice bed to stay, toiletries. You shower. They got a user room where you can go in, get a clean needle. And from a country that had one of the highest HIV and opiate use rates in the world, they now have the lowest. They closed down 6 prisons in the last 2 years.
Incredible.
And you don't see people using heroin or drugs on the streets, which was fantastic. It's all safe, it's all in the light. And South Africa's just recently legalized marijuana, and through what they do with the coffee shops and the legalization of marijuana, they pay for treatment for the people who need it.
Okay.
So
that
there is a
tax
way
dollar
to use that
is
money
going back.
for benefit, you know, and to help. There was no social differences between a doctor, a guy who flips burgers at McDonald's, or an addict who lives on the streets. They all had equal opportunity, whether it be schooling, whether it be university, the same doctors, the same schools, which I found incredible. To have a society that cares about every citizen was the most crazy thing I had seen, because I don't think we used to that here. You know, we have the rich and we have the poor, and you're lucky if you're somewhere in between there, you know. Whereas what I loved so much about it is their style of doing treatment. It was so connective, so cared about. You weren't isolated or tied up to a pole or treated any differently. The treatment center I visited, and maybe you can hear this, called Yes We Can Clinics in Eindhoven, which was for 13 to 25-year-olds, had 120 clients paid for by the government to 240 staff. So that's a 2-to-1 staff client ratio.
And on the side of staff.
On the side of staff.
What are we looking at in South African? Let's look at government centers. What's the ratio?
Government centers, minimum 1 to 10.
1 staff to 10 patients.
To 10 patients. Counsellors have a caseload of about 10 clients minimum.
So from all of this, and all of the positive socio consequences or rebounds that you've just spoken about, and I love that you touched on marijuana and the legalization, and I'd really like us to actually do a show on that. Something else I know you're very passionate about, and from us having spoken before, it doesn't really mean much to us addicts, because the disease isn't about legality or even about the drugs. So we'll get to that. We'll do another show on that. I'd love to invite you back to speak about that specific topic, which is hot in the country right now. All these positive rebounds you spoke about would be ideal coming to South Africa, where we've got a major problem, heroin problem, that is growing exponentially every day. Nyalpe, for those of you that don't know, is heroin. It's no different. It's just heroin smoked with marijuana, basically. What could and what should, and in a perfect world, what can happen in South Africa, and how can it start being implemented, and what steps can we as a society take in order to bring about what you've just described having happened in Amsterdam, Netherlands, Europe?
I think we need a multi-prong approach. In other words, harm reduction is not an end game solution. It's a part of a process that if we start by distributing clean needles, we start by using the money from legalization of marijuana to build better treatment centers, to employ better staff, to educate better. We hand out the needles, we reduce the HIV AIDS rate. We also use that money to educate our youth. So we start having better school programs or life orientation programs. And we stop the youngsters from ever getting on drugs because of the education that we're providing.
Which is a big project that Breaking the Chains is involved in.
Yes.
In school education programs. And a big shout out to Uncle Mannie. I know you're listening, couldn't be here, who goes around and does a lot of school education. But that's being done by private individuals, even corporates sponsoring school education programs. Not much coming from government.
Yes, and I feel that the government should get in touch with people like Mannie, with experienced experts who actually doing this. You know, they want to develop programs without the people who are actually doing it. You know, but it is if you look at what Portugal did, theirs was a 12-year plan of doing exactly what the Dutch did, and they reduced heroin use by 51%, and they moved from the highest HIV/AIDS rates in Europe to one of the lowest now.
Even the crime rate went down.
Even the crime rates. And that's what we should look at socially, on how we implement the Portugal plan or the Dutch plan. Jails started to get empty. People were getting help. We talk about altruism or connection to others and a connected society, and no one gets looked down on.
Destigmatized people with HIV and with addiction.
What else are we going to do in this country? We've brought the army in, we've cleared the streets of Reiger Park and Aldo's and had police presence, and as soon as they're gone,
it
didn't make a dent. The war on drugs is a war that we've lost, you know, and we're going to keep fighting it unless we find a better solution to it. And a black market can only survive in an illegal society. It can't survive in an open society. So when we legalize, we decriminalize, and we use that money for better prevention, better education, more social programs, better school programs, we haven't tackled it in that way. And the evidence is that 2 places that have tackled it in that way have reduced.
And just like us as addicts, we come into recovery and we look for someone who's successfully overcome the problem we have at hand, being addiction, and that's called a sponsor. And you emulate what your sponsor did. And if, from my experience, I've seen it in my own life and in the lives of many others, you do that and you get the same result. Now, I believe what you're saying is we need to do that as a society. We need to look at someone who's successfully made a major impact on the problem being drugs, and we need to start emulating such a program.
Right now, if we look, we basically emulate what America does. And America, in terms of treatment, America throws addicts in jail. They have the highest prison population in the world. They still have an opiate epidemic, and now a benzodiazepine and oxycodone epidemic. They are no closer in all the years that they've done this to having a reduced drug use or prison population or education around drugs and alcohol that has made a dent within their society. But then you look at what Holland and Portugal did, and they did this results. And turned it around in 12 years.
And America's been running campaigns since the 70s, locking up countless amounts of addicts and filling up the prisons. So it comes down to the stick or the carrot, and in this case the carrot seems to be getting the results.
I like what Russell Brand said. Instead of fighting a war on drugs, let's make peace with drugs.
Sure. Beautiful. Okay, Justin, we've got 5 minutes left. Give us a bit of hope out there. What's happened in your life since you've gotten clean, and how's your life today? I know there's a lot of miracles. I want you to speak about them, and any shout outs you have. We've got 5 minutes left on the show. It's yours.
So when I got clean, I never thought that I could have a decent life. I remember in the 12-step program, in step 2, there's a question, what do I have hope about today? And I needed a bit of direction because I didn't feel like I had any hope but being clean. I could never have a decent life. And as my sponsor said to me, I want 5 things that you hope for, 5 things that are dreams or goals, and 5 things that you can never believe will happen. And on the 5 things that I said will never happen, I said I'll never have a relationship with a woman, with a partner, with someone who'll love me. And I'll never be able to have a kid. And I'll never give my father a grandkid, you know. And I did meet a partner who loves me for me, and we were able to have a HIV negative baby, and I have a 10-month-old son. And I never thought that's possible. And I don't think my father thought that's possible, because he has a grandson, you know, with our surname. And his eyes light up because of that. I thought I was just going to be destined to live my life as an unemployed ex-criminal, maybe packing bags at a spa or a Pick and Pay, or pushing trolleys or security guard. And today I live a life of purpose and passion, you know. I have a job that I go to every day, and I couldn't hope for a work in a better industry than helping others who've suffered from HIV, who've suffered from addiction, who've been hurt. It gives me the greatest joy in my life to see people stay a day clean, to turn their lives. I've managed to work with some guys who HIV positive, and they've gone on to meet partners and to have negative babies. And that has, every time I see that, I realize, thank God for the 12-step program, for people who didn't care what other disease I had, people who believed in me and who said, you know, you can do this, and we love you, we don't care about that other stuff, you can stay clean. And I think it's very much through connection and the love of others that today I woke up this morning to my 10-month-old son while he's going mama, which makes me angry because he must say dada, and looked in his eyes and woke up on a double bed in a house that we stayed together after just coming back from a trip from Europe. And I was someone who thought I was dead, and I was someone who thought that there's no point to being alive anymore. And I was someone who felt so completely outcasted from society and others that I thought death was the only way I could get peace. And it's a large thanks to those people like Mannie, like Breaking the Chains, like the 12-step programs, you know, that gave me a belief in myself and made me learn what love is.
Wow. Justin, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. We really want to invite you back. I think there's so much more to cover, not just on this topic, on a lot of other topics we've scratched today. Shout out to Josh here in the studio, quietly sitting and observing.
Big Josh.
Any shout outs from your side before we close for the day, Just?
I'd just like to say to all the people there who living with HIV, like, there is hope, and that we are there for each other, and all the addicts and all the guys in recovery, helping all those guys, people like Mannie, who's not here today, and Uncle Raj, and the guys from Breaking the Chains, and then the guys from the NPO that I use that helps abused women and children.
They were on the show.
Yeah, they were on the show. And then obviously the Cambridge House guys and Damien. And then the last one, to my beautiful fiance, I love you, thanks for saying yes. I had to take her to the Netherlands to get her to say yes, just joking. But yes, to have love in your life is a beautiful thing.
And then to your beautiful 10-month-old miracle son,
Mr. Carr.
Big shout out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. I've got goosebumps. The show has absolutely blown my mind. Beautiful stuff, and that's what we're all about here on Breaking the Chains Recovery Radio, broadcasting a message of hope and a message of there is a life outside of drugs and addiction. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, from 27 Boxes in Melville. My name is Warren, and I'm out.
Live from 27 Boxes in the heart of Melville, this is brandlive.co.za.